Chosen ones, there was a time when truth whispered only through symbols, dreams, and veiled mythology. But Carl Jung, one of the few who dared to map the unconscious, left behind a warning encoded in his last reflections. He spoke not to the masses, but to the one who would awaken at the edge of time. That one is you. Jung believed that archetypes weren't just psychological patterns, but living intelligences, forces of nature embedded in the soul of humanity. One of them, he noted with dread and awe, had yet to fully emerge: the archetype of the eternal outsider, the hidden one, the being who carries the tension of opposites, light and dark, divine and fallen, time and eternity. He said this being would return when the world reached its final mirror, and that mirror is cracking now. He called it the self, but hinted at something deeper, something not even the collective unconscious could restrain. He said this being would not fit into any old myth, but would become a new myth in motion, walking through fire, illusion, and collapse. Your very existence would rupture the veil between the symbolic and the real. Governments would panic. Think tanks would draft new containment strategies. Spiritual gatekeepers would scramble to close what cannot be closed. For when this archetype awakens, it triggers not a revolution, but a reckoning. Not a battle, but a synthesis so massive it undoes the timeline itself. And the signs are aligning. Ancient dreams are resurfacing in people across the globe. Visions of a figure wrapped in both shadow and gold, speaking in riddles, holding symbols that don't belong to this era. They're all seeing you, and they don't even know why. But Jung knew. He said, when this being emerges, it will not be welcomed. It will be recognized, not by the eyes of flesh, but by the deep memory that lives inside every human soul. So now, the clock has fractured. The silence has ended. The archetype returns not as prophecy fulfilled, but as prophecy rewritten. They taught you to fear your shadow, to suppress it, to keep it locked beneath masks of civility and curated identity. But what if the shadow they feared was never yours? What if the darkness trailing you wasn't a flaw, but a fragment of something ancient, placed there to remind you of what they erased? Carl Jung didn't see the shadow as evil. He saw it as essential. A mirror, a messenger. He said that the person who looks outside dreams, but the one who looks inside awakens. And yet, you were never just meant to awaken. You were designed to disrupt. The shadow trailing you wasn't born from trauma. It was planted as a cipher, a key to decode what even the unconscious mind tried to bury. You've noticed it, haven't you? The way people react to you before you speak, the unease in rooms you enter, the strange timing of your thoughts, and the way technology glitches near your presence. This isn't coincidence. This is residue. Residue of something powerful your soul once carried through forgotten realms. And the systems of this world, spiritual, governmental, metaphysical, know it. They created a false self for you to worship. They called it ego. They called it normal. They said healing meant removing the shadow, but healing for you isn't subtraction. It's remembrance. The being Jung warned about wasn't meant to be healed. It was meant to be revealed. And when the veil drops, your shadow won't disappear. It will reintegrate as the language of your true purpose, Somewhere deep in the archives of old mystery schools, the teachers spoke of a figure who would carry not just light, but uncontainable contradiction, a vessel that refuses to collapse into one polarity. That figure was banished from their teachings when the councils realized such a being couldn't be tamed. And now, that forbidden archetype walks again. Not to destroy the world, but to re-author it from a center no system understands. A center hidden beneath the shadow that was never meant to be yours, and yet always followed you like an echo waiting for its original voice. But before you remember why it was given to you, you must discover what's still bound inside it, because something ancient is stirring at the edges of your awareness, and it's not coming to be seen, it's coming to speak. Every time the clock strikes a strange alignment, every time a word is spoken in perfect coincidence with your thought, every time you see the same symbol appear on a street sign, a dream, a whisper, you think it's random, but it's not. These moments are not accidents. They're messages, markers, traces of an ancient intelligence trying to reach you through the folds of reality itself. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, meaningful coincidences with no causal link. But what he didn't say openly was that these events were part of a larger pattern designed to guide one specific being through the fog of amnesia. The web of synchronicity isn't random, it's a net, and it's been cast across time not to catch you, but to awaken you. Each event is like a breadcrumb from a realm you've forgotten, a conversation overheard, a number repeating, a sudden flash of déjà vu. These are not glitches. These are notes in a song composed for a soul designed to remember everything, not through logic, but through resonance. And when you resonate, the watchers know. That's why your life has never felt entirely private. Why even your dreams feel like they've been observed. Because when you react to synchronicity, when your awareness sharpens in that moment of divine timing, you activate a beacon they cannot ignore. And they, the ones who mapped time, who locked prophecies in vaults, start to take notice. In those moments, you are more than awake. You are outside the program. Your consciousness slips between layers of reality, and in those layers, the language of angels and ancient ones bleeds into your field. They speak in images, in symbols, in feelings too pure for words. And yet, in the middle of it all, there is a whisper of one who walked before all synchronicities, one whose entire life was an unfolding pattern of divine appointments. The man who turned water to wine did so not to amaze, but to signal. Yeshua moved through time not bound by cause, but by orchestration. Each step was aligned, every meeting, every word, every moment encoded. And now, the pattern is reactivating. Beneath the surface of every human being lies a vast psychic ocean, a realm Jung named the collective unconscious. It holds symbols, fears, desires, myths that pulse through every culture regardless of time or geography. But buried even deeper under the common stories and primal instincts is something far older, a sealed memory, a warning, a presence that has never fully incarnated until now. The collective unconscious is not just a mirror of humanity's past, it is also a defense mechanism. It protects the species by suppressing patterns that could destabilize the whole structure. Your presence threatens that structure, not because you are broken, but because you are whole, in a way this world cannot yet accommodate. From the moment you arrived, the unconscious began resisting. Dreams became dense. Feedback loops intensified. Strangers projected their darkness onto you. This wasn't bad luck. It was resistance. Resistance to your emergence. Because when you awaken, you don't just awaken for yourself. You awaken for everyone. And the system isn't ready. The dreams of others have started, including you. Faces they can't name. Symbols they can't decipher. Eyes that feel like mirrors. They don't know why, but their souls do. Somewhere inside the mythic memory of this realm, there's a prophecy that the unconscious itself has tried to forget. A being that would arrive not to fit into the archetypes, but to override them, to become a living source code in a realm of projections. You've felt it, haven't you? The way reality seems to bend near your thoughts, the way others unconsciously mimic your energy. You're not just part of the unconscious system, you're a rupture in it, a disruption the dream never expected. The collective has always guided humanity with mythic figures, the hero, the trickster, the mother, the sage. But you were born outside those roles. You're not one archetype. You're the integration of them all. And that's why the unconscious resists. Because once you step fully into your design, the dream cannot continue as it was. Something old is dying, but something older is waking through you. You've never belonged to one language, one system, one time. There's a reason ancient symbols pull at you with no explanation. Why constellations feel like they're spelling something just beyond your comprehension. Why forgotten alphabets sometimes flash in your mind like echoes from a place you can't name. You were not born to speak the tongue of one world. You were born to translate between many. Carl Jung said symbols are the doors to the unconscious. But some doors aren't just psychological, they're interdimensional. And some beings don't just observe symbols, they walk through them. You are such a being. Across time, mystics have recorded visions of a figure surrounded by glyphs that moved. Eyes like stars, hands marked with unfamiliar sigils. A presence that spoke not in words, but in vibrations that bent light itself. You may not remember it, but you've been here before, and every time your role has been the same, to awaken when the symbols begin collapsing under their own weight. This world runs on coded meaning, currency, flags, titles, religion, astrology, geometry. Every structure relies on symbols to bind perception. But what happens when someone appears who isn't bound by those symbols, but instead sees through them? You aren't decoding reality, you're rewriting it. The stars were never just distant fires, they're time markers, memory anchors, sacred coordinates that align when it's time for the veiled one to return. And when they do, the signs distort, zodiacs shift, eclipses accelerate, and the people begin dreaming in patterns that don't match anything known. That's what's happening now. And it's all because you've re-entered the field. They called you many names in ancient scripts. The translator, the anomaly, the one who walks with keys. But the deepest texts, those hidden in places only the initiated were allowed, called you something more dangerous, the living Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh. Yeshua carried this essence, moved as both message and messenger. He showed that symbols can bleed, that stars can weep, that one being can bridge heaven and earth by simply being. And now that bridge pulses again. But before you can step fully across, something waits in the void, something that remembers you from the last collapse, and it has begun whispering your name back into the stars. In temples long buried beneath jungle and stone, there are records never written in ink, only in vision. The elders of forgotten civilizations did not need parchment to remember. They dreamed in timelines, received prophecy and soundless downloads from the stars, and recorded you not in books, but in the encoded silence between breaths. You were the dream they all shared, even if they called you by different names. In Mayan codices that were burned by trembling hands, there were depictions of a being wrapped in both fire and shadow. The scribes saw this figure hovering between epochs, stepping through veils as others feared to look. In the sands of Egypt, beneath vaults that modern archaeology has yet to admit exist, the priest architects carved star maps aligned not to kings, but to a soul destined to fracture the order of ages. That soul was you. The dreams of these elders weren't bound by linear time. Their visions leapt across eras and saw your emergence precisely when the world would be unable to recognize you, yet unable to ignore you. They dreamed of your silence causing waves, your presence displacing power, your breath making ancient languages stir from their slumber. They didn't just dream of you. They dreamt for you, to prepare the path, to plant symbols in stone, sound, and star that would only activate when your consciousness arrived. The serpent on the staff, the eye in the triangle, the light between pillars. They left these not for their people, but for you, because they knew memory would fail, and only the soul could recognize its own reflection. You feel it now, a strange pull toward ancient things, a language you never studied, but somehow already know. It isn't nostalgia, it's resonance, the echo of a promise made before time had form. They swore to guard the secret of your return until the very fabric of the dream began unraveling. They gave you names, so many names, some legal, some cultural, some whispered in scorn or awe, but none of them were yours. Not truly. These were masks, fragments designed to bind you to the illusion of identity, to keep you from ever asking the one question they feared most. Who were you before the world named you? Carl Jung warned that every individual wears a persona, a mask to face society. But he also hinted at something more dangerous hidden beneath: the true self. Not a role, not an archetype, but an essence that cannot be categorized or explained. For most, the mask becomes the person, but not for you. For you, the mask was never a fit. It cracked from the moment you touched it. You've always felt the fracture, the tension between what they expected and what pulsed beneath your skin. And now, that tension is breaking open. The world is trying harder to define you, calling you rebel, heretic, anomaly. But the more they name you, the more the illusion unravels. Because your real name doesn't come from them, it precedes them. In sacred scrolls hidden beneath the dust of forgotten monasteries, there is mention of a being whose name was unpronounceable by the mouth of the sleeping, a name not written in letters, but events, a sequence of actions, ruptures, awakenings, each echoing a divine vibration. That vibration is your name, and it is beginning to rise. Yeshua once said, "I know my sheep, and they know my voice, but few understand what that voice truly is. It's not sound, it's soul memory." He didn't call followers by name. He awakened them into it. His words broke illusions. His presence shattered masks. He reminded the forgotten of what they carried. Now, you carry the same frequency. The ability to disrupt false identity with presence alone. And those who encounter you will either be pulled closer to their essence or pushed deeper into denial. Because when your true name echoes, it does not come gently. It arrives like a storm remembering where it was first born. There is a mirror they never wanted you to find. Not made of glass or silver, not hanging on a wall. This mirror is living. It breathes beneath perception. It waits in the moments between sleep and waking, between thought and action. It is the mirror of the soul, and it reflects not what you seem to be, but what you've always been. Most people fear this mirror. When they glance into it, they recoil. It shows the masks, the lies, the borrowed identities layered over centuries. But when you look into it, something different happens. The image doesn't flicker. It recognizes you. And in that recognition, ancient agreements begin to surface. You weren't just erased from history. You were erased from memory. Not because you were a threat, but because you were a witness. A witness to a pact made long ago, before the digital age, before empires, before even the stories of gods and titans. A pact forged in the silence between dimensions, where 13 keepers swore to guard the boundaries of human potential. They failed. You are the result of that failure, or perhaps its fulfillment, because you weren't meant to stay hidden forever. The mirror sees this. It has always known. And every time you reflect someone else's energy, every time people project their shadows onto you, it is the mirror responding, not you. That's why they fear your presence, not your actions. Your stillness alone activates a response in their unconscious mind. A sudden sense that something sacred is near, that something they forgot long ago is staring right back at them. There are stories of beings who could see through any lie, not because they were all-knowing, but because they had nothing to hide. Their soul was a mirror so pure that the world couldn't help but confess its secrets in front of them. You carry that same resonance. And those in power, the ones who remember the pact, they've felt it reawakening in you. They know the mirror is no longer dormant. For thousands of years, they've worked to keep reality split. Light from dark, spirit from flesh, heaven from earth, you from yourself. They built doctrines, systems, entire timelines to ensure no one could unify what they divided. But one being was always prophesied to defy that fracture, not by waging war, but by being whole. That being is you. Carl Jung warned that the greatest threat to the world was not the shadow, but the refusal to integrate it. Individuation, he called it, the union of opposites. But he also knew that for most, the integration would never be completed, except for one soul who would not reflect the pattern but embody the completion. You are that soul. You don't just hold duality. You carry its convergence. You don't reject the serpent or the dove. You walk with both. This is what terrifies them. because when one being becomes the full spectrum, systems that depend on division begin to crumble. In ancient texts erased from canon, there were whispers of a final integration, a living seal, one whose thoughts could harmonize chaos, whose presence could dissolve control. The scrolls said this being would not arrive with armies, but with memory, not to claim power, but to restore balance through their very frequency. That frequency is pulsing through you now, and in secret chambers beneath old temples, where they speak only in cipher and silence, they've begun speaking your name again. They thought they had time. They thought your awakening could be delayed. But the codes they use to separate light from dark are collapsing. The rituals are failing. You were never meant to be controlled. You were meant to be the convergence they never wanted. Yeshua once whispered that a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. But what happens when a kingdom reunites within a single being? He walked that line, human and divine, sorrow and joy, lamb and lion, and he left the pattern behind, not to be worshipped, but to be continued. You are that continuation. But final integration is not quiet. It does not come gently. And as you begin to carry what no one else could, something ancient stirs to stop you, not with force, but with illusion. Time isn't linear for you. It never was. You've always felt it bending, folding, skipping, even bleeding into itself around your presence. That's not imagination, it's reaction. Time reacts to you, because your soul doesn't move within time. Time moves around your soul. The ancients knew this. That's why your existence wasn't placed at the beginning or the middle of the age, but at the end. Not the end as in destruction, but the end as in transition. The bridge between what was and what will be. The fulcrum on which the old world pivots and falls. And you, unknowingly, have become the axis. Prophets wrote of an era where time would accelerate, where reality would glitch, where the sky would forget how to behave. What they never said aloud is that these anomalies would begin the moment you started remembering. You are not reacting to the collapse. You are triggering it. From ancient India to the deserts of the Hopi to the scrolls buried beneath Roman stone, there were always clues, symbols of a time walker, one whose heartbeat wasn't synchronized with the masses, a being whose return would mark the final breath of an age built on illusion. That breath has already been exhaled, and the systems built on that breath are now gasping. You've noticed it. Days feel shorter. Conversations loop. People glitch in front of you, forgetting what they just said, becoming blank-eyed mid-sentence. It's not just them. It's the matrix fraying. You are becoming incompatible with the illusion, and that incompatibility is spreading like a song remembered by a soul that never forgot the melody. When Yeshua walked into towns, time bent around him. Waters parted. Fruit ripened overnight. The sick healed before their minds could catch up, not because of miracles, but because time recognized him. It couldn't remain the same in his presence, and now it recognizes you. But if the final age ends when you awaken, what begins after? What structure will time take when it's no longer chained to cycles of fear and control? The clock is not ticking toward an apocalypse. It's ticking toward a being, and that being is you. Beneath all nations, all languages, all veils of identity. There exists something ancient and indivisible, a pulse. It moves through oceans, wind, memory, and flesh. Jung called it the anima mundi, the world soul. And while most merely feel it in glimpses, you were born wired directly to it, not as a receiver, but as a transmitter. From the moment you entered this realm, the world soul shifted. It didn't awaken all at once, but it stirred. It knew something had changed. Something ancient had re-entered the field. For the world soul is not bound by biology or belief. It's bound by resonance, and your frequency is unlike any it has ever registered. That's why storms feel personal to you, why the wind sometimes moves when you exhale, why animals watch you as if remembering something, why dreams begin to bleed into waking life around your presence. You're not hallucinating. You're syncing. The world soul has been waiting, not for a revolution, not for a savior, but for a signal. A specific energy signature encoded long before time measured itself. A signal that could only be emitted by one being, the being who would carry the full spectrum, light and dark, heaven and earth, human and divine. You are that signal. There are forgotten prophecies that speak of a day when the earth would respond to one person, not as a god, but as a mirror. The oceans would shift their tides in rhythm. The stars would glitch. Gravity itself would loosen its grip, not in destruction, but in celebration. The world doesn't fear your awakening. It needs it. Yeshua once stood before the sea and it calmed, not because he commanded it, but because it recognized him. His presence was a signal to the world soul that the divine had walked into form. You walk with that same echo, but something even more dangerous. You walk with the memory of why it matters, and now the resonance is rising. The mountains tremble in silence. The trees are whispering. Animals move without reason. The world soul is no longer dormant. It is listening, because your signal has activated the grid that was never supposed to light up again.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.